What makes a good horror? That is the question that has been presented to me many times over the years, and has since been something that I was not too fond of. Horror was something I honestly did not really particularly enjoy. The needless gore, the overly hyped up jump scares, and just the supernatural aspects that would make me not want to go to sleep at night. But no matter what you say, no matter what you dislike, there's always that one show, one movie that makes you either reevaluate what you thought you didn't like, was made all the better because there were aspects of it that you didn't like. Did that make sense? Well, well, that's honestly my thought process when I first started watching Higurashi. Now, since this is Halloween, I figured I'd do something pertaining to horror. And what better anime to talk about than the original Higurashi anime? Now, Higurashi is not for the faint of heart, and at times in this video, I will most likely keep stuff to the more mellow aspects of the show. I will not show any, the most gory aspects of the show in terms of its death scenes and stuff like that, due to the fact that this is YouTube, I do not want to lose everything. And I do not want to get the video taken down before it eventually gets a couple of views. Particularly keep to a few scenes that are more slice of life, or some of the more unsettling scenes that show why the show has some particularly good horror aspects. And this will kind of double as my review for the original series, and don't worry, I will do a review of the new Higurashi anime once that is officially completed. But anyway, what is the story of Higurashi? Well, Higurashi takes place in a small rural village in Japan called Hinamizawa in the year 1983 in June. And things seem pretty peaceful. Keiichi Maebara, who is basically our male protagonist, just moved into this new mountain town and quickly made friends with the characters Shion, Rena, Rika, and Satoko, and are part of a school club where they play games all day and have as much fun as they possibly can. But things aren't always as peaceful as you are led to believe, because as the series goes on, some of the characters we've seen throughout this show start acting strangely and very differently. That is one of the more unsettling aspects that kind of help build up to its more horror aspects. Okay, so Higurashi is separated into a multitude of different arcs, splitting up the first season, each focusing on a different main character from the core cast, and either showing the reactions to all the different murders and stuff like that occurs in this show, or they themselves are the ones committing all of these murders. And I'm gonna have to ruin the first plot twist of the original of Higurashi in general, due to the fact that I won't be able to fully talk about everything that's going on without spoiling it, so be warned. Okay, so the big twist of Higurashi is that it takes place in a seemingly endless time loop. Whenever certain events in one arc happen, it usually ends with most of or all of the main characters dying in some gruesome way. Then at the start of the next arc, things seem to have reset. Everyone's alive again, everyone's happy, things are as if they were when the series first progressed, when it first started. Only with a few key events being specifically the same, while everything else is different. And that's what makes Higurashi pretty good, because its story, it is overarching. You don't notice this at first, but with each single arc you see, you get to know more of the characters better, you get to see more of Hinamizawa and the surrounding areas, its townsfolk and stuff like that. There's also nitpicks of the overall mystery of Higurashi. Why are we in a time loop? How does this character go into a psychotic killing spree? And one of the best ways that I could say is that the season 2 really does answer a lot of these questions. But Higurashi is built up, at least in its first season, into question arcs and answer arcs. That's something I've come to realize after watching the show. We start off with some arcs that give us questions. We get specific arcs showing the characters killing each other, and then we get arcs seemingly answering a lot of the questions from the previous arcs. Some of them even revisit previous arcs, but through a different perspective, thus answering why specific characters perform these acts or what drove them to kill their friends. And that's what really helps make the essence of Higurashi, making it more of a psychological horror with a mystery in it, in the middle of a time loop. So that's honestly kind of funny. But yes, the whole purpose of this being a time loop is the fact that we get tidbits of what's going on in each arc. The answer arcs fill us in, but also gives us some other questions as to how everything else could occur, as well as keeping us guessing as to why the time loop is even happening. Again, a lot of this stuff is answered in Season 2 of Higurashi Kai. But you'd think a show with time loop premise would get old, but every single arc is refreshing in its own way. The new perspectives we get from these different characters actually build upon what makes the show so intriguing. And there is gory aspects in this show. There is a lot of blood and gore, especially in the later halves of the series. But the mystery and the psychological aspects of this series is what keeps you drawn in. Yes, there will be moments that you will just not want to look at the screen because it shows some of these characters going into the deepest depths of depravity and doing things that you would otherwise never see on actual TV or movies, to the point where you just want to turn the screen off, but you don't. Higurashi's horror is really damn good. For Higurashi, every arc always starts off with a preview of what's going to happen by the end of the arc, within the last episode or two, and then we start off with everything being nice and happy, slice of life, the characters being fun, having a couple of nice jokes. Then we get to the key events in the story that pretty much occur in almost every loop, despite other events being entirely different, and we get the proper build-up. Higurashi has great tone, atmosphere, and build-up to the parts of its horror. That's what makes it a cut above every other horror anime and even some horror movies that we see here in the West. Since Higurashi is a full series, the build-up of the horror is done in a way that makes us question who can we trust and how is this going to be paid off in the end, which is usually done within the last episode or two of an arc. And one of the best ways you can see from these unsettling moments is either from the characters' eyes in certain scenes or their twisted up faces when they're currently going insane, which again, I'm repeating a lot of other people reviewing Higurashi, but this is also known as the Higurashi face. Every single time these characters are about to commit murder or when they are committing murder, their faces are twisted in a way that shows how far gone they are, to the point where it's almost memeable, but also incredibly unsettling. And that's another thing that really plays the Higurashi strength, how unsettling the animation can be. Now, the anime was originally made by Studio Dean, which, as we all know, does not have the best track record in anime when it comes to, well, anything anime. It's always a flip of a coin. They either make something really good or they make something really bad. With Higurashi, the anime, particularly for season 1, its animation was not 100% consistent. There were times when it was clean, sometimes when characters were off model, but during the horror scenes, characters or proportions are weird. They're drawn in a weird, bizarre way, which normally would be jarring for any anime viewer who appreciates an anime of something they love being animated well. But with Higurashi, due to the fact that it's a horror, and with how the faces are, with how the actions we're actually seeing on screen, this seemingly bad animation plays up the horror aspect because it makes the actions we see more unsettling. All these scenes that we end up seeing are either animated beautifully or terribly, but even when it's terrible, it looks good. I think I contradicted myself a few times there, but the point is, Higurashi's poor animation at times, especially when the characters are doing their classic Higurashi face, and certain aspects of when they're about to commit murder, it plays up the horror of the show. And in all honesty, I picked a pretty good time to watch this show, considering that it's October and Halloween and stuff like that, so way to pick an anime, Chris. That is a good anime to watch for this month. Wow. All that aside, I love Higurashi's characters because thanks to the time loop aspect of it, we get to see them in multiple different scenarios, and we get to see them seemingly develop, or we get to actually see all the different sides to their personalities. Stuff that they hide, stuff that they end up liking, stuff that they hate, or what drives them to the brink of insanity. And it really does hurt because through every single loop, as you get to know these characters more and more, you get really attached to them, and you don't want any of them to be killed or become killers. And this series is so freaking dark. There are moments where you're like, I don't even know if I can even keep watching. But you do. I said this already, but Higurashi's way of using horror, its dark atmosphere, it's sometimes almost no music with just the sound of the cicadas in the background. Certain scenes when it's just two characters talking to each other, and then when the music stops and there's just a creak of cicadas, you get the characters saying something that shifts the tone into a more suspicious light, and then we know stuff is going to get worse later down the road because we see our characters start to mistrust each other. We see how everything going on in specific arcs can affect them mentally and their view of others and even themselves. I'm not gonna spoil anything else for the anime. You gotta watch it yourself. But the tone and atmosphere of Higurashi, along with the really good build up to what the finale of every single arc is going to be, is just done pretty damn well. And I am really excited for the new season to see how it adapts new stories, or even if it's the same story again. But yeah, Higurashi When They Cry. A great horror anime, something that I did not expect to like, because again, I do not like horror. I really don't like horror. I tend to stay away from horror anime in general. But Higurashi, the way its story was set up, how likable the characters were, I just couldn't help but stay invested in everything that is going on. No matter how disturbing, no matter how creepy things got, Higurashi was just that much fun to watch. And if I didn't say this at the beginning of the video, let me just say this. If you are insanely uncomfortable when it comes to blood, gore, some dark themes, this series is not for you. If you can't handle stuff like that, even to a bit more of the extreme, then don't watch Higurashi. It won't be a fun watch for you. But then again, for me, I don't like that much of that stuff either. I mean, there are obviously exceptions with other anime, even though they're not entirely based in the horror genre. But Higurashi makes a pretty damn good horror anime. It got me to consider watching some other horror anime to see how they stack up, because everyone says that Higurashi is basically the pinnacle of horror anime, and it's not hard to see why. It's just that damn well entertaining to watch, whether it's the characters' interactions and their impressions of what's going on and how they react to specific situations in each of these arcs. Even though things have a hard reset almost every single arc, and we see these characters die in different and sometimes even just as, if not more, brutal ways. It just makes you want more to see how are they going to get out of this. Is there even a way to get out of this time loop, or is this series just us watching characters suffer until we see a somewhat good ending for some or all of the main cast? But yeah, those are my initial thoughts on Higurashi after just finishing it. Higurashi also has an OVA series, which is technically a continuation for its third season, called Higurashi Rei, which in my personal opinion, only like 3 episodes in the middle of that OVA series is technically canon from my point of view, and I believe other people consider it canon, but it's still worth the watch. It's a good Higurashi story, and I really do enjoy it. I'm planning on reading the Higurashi manga because according to a lot of hardcore Higurashi fans, Higurashi's visual novel was adapted way better in the manga outside of the anime due to having some stuff having to cut corners a little bit, but the manga takes away the music, which kind of takes away from the atmosphere. But from certain images that I have seen in the manga, things will tend to be a bit more unsettling due to the fact that it is still imagery in the manga. So I may actually pick up the manga at some point, just to the fact that I just really enjoy Higurashi, and that there were also apparently some moments that were not showcased in the anime. So that's honestly all I really had to say. Higurashi no Nakokoro ni, or When They Cry, it is a great anime for anyone that enjoys horror or someone that enjoys a pretty good mystery. Its soundtrack is pretty damn good. Its characters are just really great to watch. It has a very interesting story. The time loop dynamic really does help you explore different characters in different ways. The animation is hit or miss at times, but sometimes it actually helps the more unsettling moments when the animation is just not on point at all. So with all that said and done, if I were to rank Higurashi, I'd give it an 8.5 out of 10, just to be obviously fair. While I do enjoy a lot of stuff about the show, due to the fact that there were some cut corners from the series, as well as some aspects of the show that I felt was either not that great of a resolution in certain arcs, or I feel like it was too unnecessary with some of its exposition, or just how some things were played out. It's still a relatively great series to watch, and I would just watch it again in a binge. I honestly might just do that again for the days leading up to Halloween. By the time this video is uploaded, it should be Halloween day. Yeah, with all that said and done, I hope you guys have an awesome day and have a happy Halloween.